so I am actually the next speaker, so I'm just going to stay here, and hopefully no one needs to introduce me, but here we go. So I was asked to give a talk about understanding clinical trials from a family perspective. I'm not here to talk about regulatory, and I'm not here to talk about any of the true details from a drug developer perspective. I'm here mostly to talk about how, as a guide for families, the questions we should be asking, and how we can empower parents through knowledge, hope, and honestly, clinical trial etiquette. And many people ask me to give the nitty-gritty of what parents need to know about clinical trials, what they need to think about from a parent perspective, not from a sponsor perspective. So I am wearing my parent hat. I am wearing my FAST hat, but obviously, as you know, I am the CSO of FAST, the co-director of ABOM, the CDO of AS²Bio, but most importantly, the hat I'm wearing right now is I am the mother to Quincy. Here are my disclosures. Okay, so I shouldn't have to tell you what a clinical trial is, but there are a lot of newly diagnosed families here in the room, and they may actually not really be familiar with what it is and why. So clinical trials really test new drugs or devices or different types of therapies for safety and potential efficacy or effectiveness. That's what a clinical trial is. Each trial includes specific eligibility criteria, basically that are selected with very careful consideration of who should be included in this clinical trial and for what reason. And that's called inclusion or exclusion criteria, which I'll talk a little bit about. And that could be different things like what is their age, what is their genotype, what is their prior treatment exposure, what else have they seen in their body that could interact with potentially what we're trying to measure here, what other medications are they on? What other disorders might they have? These are all very, very important pieces that we have to know about our children as we think about enrolling them in a clinical trial. So inclusion criteria means what characteristics of a person must they have to be eligible to be in that specific clinical trial. And really it defines who can participate in that trial. On the other hand, there's exclusion criteria, which essentially defines who disqualifies, who cannot be included in that clinical trial. And those decisions generally are not made because anyone wants to exclude anyone. We're the most inclusive, of course, but it's because maybe that person with whatever other things going on in their life, whether it's a genotype, whether it's an age, whether it's other medications that they're on, whether it's any other condition that they might have, really are deemed to not be the perfect candidate for these early studies in which we would be testing some type of drug or biologic or device. So there are these inclusion criteria which you must meet, and there are these exclusion criteria which could disqualify you. It doesn't mean you're disqualified from everything. It just means you may be disqualified from that specific trial at that specific time. And as sponsors learn more and more about their drug, they're going to include more and more over time because they're going to broaden their, the view in which they're looking at their therapeutic. Clinical trials are conducted under very strict regulatory oversight. And so you have to be very precise, you have to be very careful, and parents, that means, have to follow the rules. They have to show up when they're supposed to show up. They have to report what they're supposed to report. And let's go through that as a parent, what's really important for you to understand. So why, you may say, like, why do we have to do clinical trials? If there's a drug, why can't all people get them? Well, clinical trials test safety and the potential improvement or lack of improvement in the lives of people affected with a disorder like Angelman syndrome. And so these trials may be conducted to understand how a new technology behaves in people, which means there's risk and there's potential benefit. But everybody needs to understand that. Each participant and their family are incredibly brave if they are contributing to advancing the science, understanding they are taking a major risk of the unknown. And that is not for everyone. It is not for the faint of heart, and it is a very serious commitment that families have to be prepared for. The parents of our children are the true partners in the discovery effort to understand drugs and how they work. Their commitment to the requirements of these clinical trials cannot be underestimated and is incredibly prudent in order to be successful in these therapies. Parents need to be able to ask questions. They need to understand what is expected of them. They need to understand what is going to happen step by step in their child. And they need to carefully listen to the required schedule, which is called the schedule of assessments. The expectations of their participation and the potential risk of their participation. And I can tell you that I know a lot of parents that get information about trials before they enroll on an informed consent, which we're going to talk about, don't even read it. They don't listen because they're so excited that they sign it. You have to read it. You have to listen to the doctors, and you have to pay attention and ask questions because you're signing something that could be risky to your child. This is real. The fact that we're even talking about this is so exciting, but this is real. And there is real potential for benefit, but there is real potential for risk. And as we are in these early stage programs, until we have a lot more information, you have to read it. You have to ask questions. And so I don't think I need to tell anybody about the phases of clinical trials, right? But what I want to share is you heard yesterday about really what we call phase 0, which is like all the preclinical stuff, all of the animal work, all of the things we need to prove that we can get to first in human. Then there's the early phase 1, often mixed with phase 2 in rare disease, where it's a small number of participants. Gene therapy trials may be 6 people, 9 people, 12 people, very, very, very small numbers of people to understand safety and dose, durability, effect. All of those things are hopefully determined in those early stage programs, as you saw with the ASOs. Those ASO phase 1-2 studies went on for years before they moved into the pivotal, which is your phase 3. Your phase 3 generally recruits more numbers of participants, having a bigger track record of the understanding of a drug or a biologic. A lot more information will be given to you about that drug or biologic because a lot more has been learned in the human space. And in those trials, sometimes there's what we call a control, meaning some patients get the drug and some patients don't get the drug, to compare against treatment and no treatment. In some phase 3 studies, there isn't a control. Because, for example, in a gene therapy, you can't actually put a needle in the skull, behind the skull, and deliver saline. You can't do that. That's not really would be considered ethical. So there are certain ways in which you can't do a controlled study easily, but you might be able to do a sham study more easily. And so you have to realize different studies are going to look a little different because there are some things you can and can't do for permanent treatment therapies. And you saw this yesterday where we have multiple programs in clinical trials, 6 programs in clinical trials currently, and they're all in different phases. But we have 3 more programs that are coming into this space, hopefully in the coming years, and multiple behind that. Our AAV gene therapy you heard about, our ASOs, our HSC gene therapy hopefully very soon. Our ASOs are now in phase 3, so they're in the controlled phase. Our CRISPR gene editor you just heard about is hopefully going to be in a phase 1-2 in the near term. Small molecules, siRNA, miRNA, we heard a bit about that from Encoded the other day, from Emma on yesterday morning, and hopefully we'll hear more about from them next year. And then some of the small molecules, some of the downstream targets, like Alogabat from Roche or the Neurin drug. These are all in different phases, and they're all going to look quite different because they have different risk profiles, and they're gonna include different types of patients for various different reasons. And so the steps to enrollment, this is quite complicated. There are multiple different steps. One, you have to find the trial. Two, there's this pre-screening period. Then there's a screening visit. Then you have to read an informed consent. Then you enroll. Then you have to do baseline assessments to understand where your child is starting from. Then they participate in the study, and they hopefully get a study drug. And then you have to do a lot of follow-up and a lot of understanding of the safety and the potential efficacy. So there is an incredible amount that goes into this. So how do you find a trial? The best place to find a trial is on clinicaltrials.gov. Jennifer did a really great presentation a couple years ago about this. So you go on clinicaltrials.gov, www.clinicaltrials.gov. You type in Angelman syndrome, and it has all of the clinical trials that are either open for enrollment or recruiting for enrollment on the trial, or that are part of the study and that might be enrolling. That's where you find the sites. That's where you find who to contact if you are interested in hearing more. That's not how you enroll. It's how you know what's available and how you contact the sites if you want to hear more. The other places that you'll get that information is at the advocacy group level. So at the FAST website, at the ASF website, and we try to collaborate and work together to alert the community in the newsletters, on social media, about sites that are opening or trials that are recruiting. But you are gonna need to do some of the legwork yourself, and you should look regularly if you're interested on clinicaltrials.gov. You wanna then discuss the consideration and the interest with your neurologist or clinical care team to decide if this is appropriate for you as a family and for your child. Is that specific trial suitable for you? There's many things you may not know about it that you're gonna learn as you talk to some of the doctors. If you decide that this is something you would like more information on, you can contact the trial site at clinicaltrials.gov, or the sponsor sometimes has a generalized website where you can contact them, and then they will connect you to the clinical trial sites that are closest to you in your region, in your state, wherever you are globally. Then you want to inquire about all of the options, not just one, that your child might be eligible for. Don't just jump on the first thing you see, a gene therapy, because maybe there's an ASO that's available that your child could qualify for. Maybe there's a CRISPR gene editor that's available that your child could qualify for. You want to know all of the options. Remember, knowledge is power. You need to understand all of your options, understand the differences to make an educated decision for your child. And is that trial right for you? You need to understand all of that. If you decide a trial you think you're really interested in and you determine you think is right for you, then you're going to contact the site and you're going to talk to the site. And they're going to do what we call a pre-screening. That pre-screening is where the study team will contact you for an initial review of your child's medical history. That can include all sorts of things. It could be done by the phone, it could be done by email, or it could be done in person. And they're going to ask you a lot of questions, trying to figure out if your child fits the basic inclusion or exclusion criteria. Are they meeting those criteria? Does your child actually qualify? And if it is determined that they qualify, then they're going to ask to share more medical records to confirm that, which might include some laboratory test results. So you want to have access to that. What is their genetic test results? Do you have their diagnosis of their genetics? Is it a deletion because someone told you it's a deletion, or do you have a piece of paper that says it's a deletion? Is it a mutation? Is it UPD? Is it ICD? What are the genetic tests that were done? Get access to that information and have that at the ready so you can send that to the sites. They're going to want you to share those laboratory results, prior testing information, understanding their age, your location, where you live, and any other problems they have. Don't hide those things because you're worried they won't be included. because it might not be safe for your child if they have something else going on. Do they have any associated heart disease? Do they have any associated kidney disease? Do they have diabetes, hypertension? Are they mobile? Don't like, well, my child can walk from the couch to the TV and back to the couch, but they never walk throughout the rest of the day, and they generally are in a pushchair. They're not considered fully ambulatory. You have to be honest about that, because the reason ambulatory matters could be for safety reasons, and you want to ensure that your child really fits in the right criteria for those studies. So then, if it's determined that things are looking good for that child, you're going to have a screening visit. You're going to go to the site, you're going to meet the study doctor, and you're going to spend time talking to that person about what's going to happen over the course of the study and the details of the study, the eligibility, the inclusion, the exclusion. They're going to make that very clear. They're going to go over with you all of those details, and they're going to explain to you all of the steps. The visit has to include, that baseline data collection, new blood work, are they healthy? All of these things are going to explain all of that to you. Are they able to participate and get that MRI that's required? Are they able to get a lumbar puncture that's required? Well, if your child has scoliosis and rods, maybe multiple LPs is going to be a challenge. So maybe that's not the best study for you. Maybe they're thinking a different study would be better for you, where you wouldn't have to repeat dose into the spinal space. So these are all really, really important things. They're going to talk to you about something called an informed consent form, which is required to be signed before they can do anything with your child. They can talk to you before that, but they can't pull blood, they can't do an MRI, they can't do any other assessments until you sign this informed consent. And so that informed consent process is a serious, serious process. And all I can say is you have to read it. I know, and I talk to the PIs, a lot of people don't read it. And they just say yes, yes, yes. You have to pay attention, you have to read it. This is where you're gonna learn as much as possible about these studies. You're gonna learn the goals, the procedures, the duration, the expectations for you as a family, the expectations for your child, the study schedule, the duration of time the study is gonna take, the potential risks, hopefully the potential benefits, and the right of privacy and withdrawal. So if you want to pull your child out, what does that look like? The privacy of your child, all of those things are going to be in there. You need to ask questions before signing anything, because sometimes the informed consents can be a little bit vague, so you want to make sure that you ask the questions that you have. That's very, very important. What's the dose? What's the experience at the site of doing that procedure? What's the experience in the field with that technology? What's the experience in the field for Angelman syndrome with that technology? Maybe even what's the experience in animals with this technology? Where can I hear about that information? You have the right to ask those questions. Often you're given this form prior to the visit where you're asked to read it and then come to the site ready to sign it if you're interested and ask your questions. Read it. Even if you're reading it in the car, on the plane, I don't really care. Just read it. You have to write questions down, ask the questions. When you're in front of the study doctor, you're nervous. You might not think about the questions that you should be asking. So take some time beforehand and ask those questions. For children and adults with AS, they're not able to provide their own consent. So the parents have to do it for them, and that's very, very important. So understanding that process is key. Explaining the purpose, the expectation, and the requirements, as I said, reviewing carefully and asking your questions. Understanding the schedule of expectations for you. How often do I need to come back to the hospital? How many EEGs? How many blood draws? How many MRIs? How many CSF taps? Those are questions you need to know, and you can't just blip by them. Remember that participation is voluntary, but you must commit to satisfy the requirements. And if you can't, do not enroll in that study. One, you're taking a spot from somebody else, and two, if you know you can't commit to it, you have to be honest about that. You can withdraw at any time, and you have to remember that. If you are not comfortable with what is happening with your child, you can withdraw. The data may be shared that you're committing to these trials, the data that you produce may be shared with other vendors. Your CSF fluid might be shared with other vendors. It's generally de-identified, but you may be sharing information about your child with other vendors, and that's all in the informed consent. So again, read it carefully. Then your child may be enrolled in a trial. Once they're confirmed to meet the inclusion criteria, you sign the informed consent, the primary investigator and the parent agree it's the right thing for that child, they will enroll. Study coordinators then will come in and they will schedule the visits for you and provide you with the details of the instructions of all of the next steps. Working closely with those coordinators is absolutely key so that each participant receives the information they need. They all get an ID that's de-identified, so when you see patient numbers in clinical trials, nobody knows who they are. It's very important that it's essentially anonymous for those families. Then they're gonna get baseline assessments, measurements, evaluations, the ORCA, the Bailey, the Vineland, an MRI, a CT. All of these things are those baseline assessments to know your starting point, and then over time, you're gonna get all of these assessments repeated to see how things change over time. Some of these endpoints are clinician reported, meaning you're doing a test and the clinician is assessing the patient. Others are parent reported. So you're filling out a survey or they're asking you questions or you're doing an interview. Clinician reported and parent reported both have huge value in drug development. Often a tablet's used to fill out some of these. So you might take a tablet home or you might do it at the site. All things to participate. Then with study participation, they get a treatment. Then they get monitored, then they have follow-up visits. You must report any and all side effects, whether they're drug-related or not drug-related. Ultimately, the doctor will determine if the side effects are drug-related. But you as a parent have the right to say, I'm having a side effect with my child, and this only happens after my child receives this therapy. I believe this is drug-related. You have the right to say that. You have the right to report what you see, and you cannot hide what you see, because what you're gonna do is you could cover up a safety signal that can harm other patients in the future. It's very important you report everything to your study doctor. The data is collected both for efficacy and safety, and after active participation, that follow-up period can vary 1 year, 2 years, even 3 months. And then for gene therapies, it could be 5 years or 15 years. What are you committing to? You have to know that. You may receive study updates, generally not necessarily about your child. You're gonna see it in press releases, in presentations, in investor calls. Listen to them, watch them, pay attention to them, because the data of your child is gonna be in there buried with other children and adults as well. And the results are often only presented in the early stages in these public forums. So key questions to ask, there's lists of them. What's the goal of this trial? What are the possible risks and the possible benefits of enrolling in this trial? What happened in the animal studies? What do we need to think about for humans? Will my child receive treatment? Will they receive a placebo? Will they receive a sham? Will they receive a sugar pill? What is my child gonna get? And if they're on that control, when will they change over to get treatment, if at all? You have to know that. How often do I need to come back to the hospital? Will there be assessments done locally? Do I need to come back in? All of the things you need to be very critical of. Is this a single treatment therapy? Is it a repeat treatment therapy? How is that done? Who do I contact if I have a problem? Get their phone number, get their email. You have to have someone to contact if there's a problem. What happens if I want to withdraw? What's the process of that? How do I do that? Who pays for this? Who's paying for the cost? Who's paying to get to the site? Who's paying for parking? Who's paying to leave the site? Who's paying for food? Who's paying for all of this? You have to ask these questions. And then once all the phases are complete, will my child be able to stay on the drug? If not, when will my child be able to get the drug again? All of these things you need to ask. So make a checklist, review and understand your ICF, ask all of the questions, keep copies of all of the documents, confirm you know the contact person and their number, and that you can always reach out to them with any questions. Keep a schedule of all of your appointments, show up when you're supposed to show up, know the days and the times, discuss travel and lodging and reimbursement logistics, and know your right to withdraw at any time, because you have that right. And so lastly, we'll end with appropriate etiquette. Avoid sharing trial details on social media. I cannot emphasize that enough. Nobody should be talking about their experience in clinical trials on social media. It creates havoc and expectation that can destroy a clinical trial. Most of these trials start off open label, and then people have expectations of what to expect. You can't do that. You could talk about it privately with your friends and family, but you should not talk about it publicly in a clinical trial until the data has been shared. Very important. The same caregiver should be doing all of the assessments each time. If it was dad that started, dad should finish. If it's mom that started, mom should be there for all of the assessments. Consistency is everything. If side effects occur, they must be immediately shared with your study doctor. Nothing, like I said, should be shared on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever. Stop doing it. No private Facebook groups so you think no one sees it. We all know. Don't do it. It's just really destructive to the program. And don't predict what you're going to see. You set expectations that might be unrealistic. Drugs might work, they might not work. Let the data show if the drug is working. You're allowed to be excited, you're allowed to be proud of what you see, but don't predict to create a sense of expectations. Try not to, it's really hard. If you see community members at a trial site, they may be in different clinical trials or at a community event, try not to talk about it, your trial experience with them. Try to keep it private because you're setting expectations. And try not to talk to industry members about your experience in clinical trials at conferences like this. I know it's hard, but don't go up to Ionis or Ultragenyx or Roche or Oak Hill and say, my daughter's in your trial and I'm having this experience. That's not who you should be talking to about that. You should be talking to your study doctor about that because they are really meant to be blinded to who's in the trial and have a line in the sand from those patients. So it's not great to do that, so try not to. Try to be a little bit more vague about things. I know that's hard as well. And then finally, respect confidentiality, data integrity, and your child's privacy. Track groups are discouraged. Be mindful of community influence on outcomes. And any adverse events, albeit drug-related or non-drug-related, must be reported to trial sites. They have to be taken very seriously. Our other co-patriots of parents and families deserve to know what the risks are for their child who are not yet in that trial. And if you don't report it, they will not learn from that. It's very, very important. You must make sure your concerns are heard at every level. Empower yourself as a family to ask questions. Ensure that you do not disclose your child's participation publicly. Document your journey. Take videos before of all the things your child can't do. Take videos after of all the things your child can do. And then you have that to show pre and post. It doesn't mean the study wants that information, but you want that information in your own life as your own diary. I encourage you to do that. Try and document their skills leading up to that. Listen to the study updates and share your experience, good or bad, with the study doctor. That's really how you empower yourself to be part of the journey of drug development. So with that, remember always, knowledge is power. You can't make decisions on things you don't understand. So we have to all contribute to the research, and we have to all ask questions. So with that, thank you. Okay, so we are due for a break. That break is we're going to return in about 10 minutes. So it's going to be a short break, and I want everyone to know, people that want more t-shirts, apparently everyone wants these t-shirts, but they close soon. If you want more and you already got one, I guess they're selling them for $20, but go outside, go to the t-shirt making area, tell them what you want, and you can get more t-shirts, but I think they close at 12:30. So anybody that wants to get more t-shirts, go ahead and get them because they won't be there after the final session where we're going to hear from the ASO programs.